As a new player myself, Path of Exile 2 can be extremely overwhelming sometimes. I did my best to avoid looking at guides as much as possible in the beginning, but towards the middle and end game now that I'm kind of in, I really needed some assistance, and I really wish I probably had started with some beginner's tips beforehand, as this was my first time really playing a Path of Exile game at all. I had no idea the depth that I was about to jump into. So I wanted to make a series of videos for new players. Just some basics that you may already know and hopefully some that you didn't. And if you're wondering where to start in the world of Rayclast, maybe this is it. So let's get into it. Alright, so you've paid your $30 for the early access that we're all in right now, and you get to this screen. So we're going to start with a really dull tip, but character choice is kind of important. What I would recommend here is if you've played another game like this before, or really any MMO RPG or action RPG, pick what you're comfortable playing. So if you're more of the type to kind of hang back and shoot from a distance and not be in the action, maybe pick something like a ranger or the witch, where you can send in a bunch of minions and kind of stay out of the fray. If you like pain and enjoy chaos and enjoy getting knocked around, if you're into that sort of thing, go for a melee character, right? Something like the monk is incredibly fun. That's what I chose, and apparently it's one of the stronger in-game classes. So for once I finally picked the right one. But anyway, all classes are really in-game viable, but I would recommend that you strongly pick one that you feel comfortable playing. And who's to say it's the worst to try each one out? I wouldn't go all the way into the end game before you decide you want to change the main character you play, but hey, why not just give them all a try and see which one you like the most? The next piece I want to talk about is skill gems. There's some crazy things going on with these that I think I'm still learning as I'm playing, but here's the basic part of it. There's three types of these. There's the first type, which is the skill gem itself, and you get these in the form of uncut skill gems. When you cut the skill gem, it grants you the actual skills you use, right? So something like on the monk would be an ice strike, or the lightning rods on the ranger, things like that. These grant the actual skills that you use and that you physically see happening when you use one of your action keys. The second type of gem would be a support gem. These modify how those skill gems that we just talked about work, whether by enhancing damage or changing how they work or making something else happen with them, like poison on hit or something to that effect. These support gems add more to the skill gems that you cut and allow them to do some pretty unique things. And then the final form of skill gem, at least that I've encountered so far that you would need to know, is the spirit skill gem. You get these after you unlock spirit in Act 1, and you might start getting them a little bit before and wondering what the heck you're supposed to do with these. But these are special buffs, basically, that you need the spirit stat in order to allow them to activate. So if it has a spirit reservation of 30 and you only have 30 spirit, great, it'll work. But if it has a spirit reservation of 45 and you only have 30 spirit, it will not work. These activate and kind of stay active in the background. Certain forms of them also allow you to put skill gems in them. So something like cast on dodge. So if I wanted to use my skill after I dodged, these gems allow you to insert some skill gems in them and allow you to use that skill after you perform a certain action. And those require a certain amount of spirit reservation. I know that sounds really confusing right now, but once you get to see it, you kind of understand. Just read the text very carefully as you go through these, and I think you'll get a clear understanding of what you're looking at there. I am sure that there's a better video guide, whatever you want to look at out there, that will explain that in better detail, but I could probably spend another hour talking about how different skill gems work, but we'll leave it at that. These are the basics, this is what you need to know, and this will at least get you started. Alright, moving on. For the next segment, I'd like to talk about currency, and oh boy, where do I even start? I think the obvious tip is to literally save every currency you get if possible. Let's start with that as the main tip. Following up with that, there are a ton of different currencies and they do all sorts of different things. Some of them take normal items and make them magic items. Some of them take magic items and make them rare items. Some of them add more prefixes and suffixes to the different rare items that you have or to the magic items that you have. Ultimately, it's pretty simple when you read them. I could sit here and walk you through one by one what they are, but think of them more like crafting ingredients. So try to save them as much as possible unless you absolutely need to upgrade your gear, like you're completely stuck, you have no idea how to push forward, and you need to upgrade your gear, go for it. But certain currencies are worth a lot, and they kind of drop in all the modes. Like I've heard some people saying that they got a divine orb while they were running the regular campaign, right? Which is pretty crazy. They're extremely rare. I just got my first divine orb last night, and I've been playing basically since we started the early access. And I sold that divine orb because I don't really have any in-game gear to use it right now for about 112 exalted orbs, which is kind of the pseudo base currency for how people trade for gear and things like that. So beyond the currencies that drop like exalted orbs and divine orbs and things like that, there are other currencies, quote unquote, that I would call them, that are more related to upgrading your gear. And the way that you get some of those is by dismantling gear, either through the salvage bench if they have a quality indicator or are socketed, or you disenchant them at one of the town magical people, I don't know, shamans, whatever you want to call them, and they can break it down to give you pieces of augmentation orbs and things like that. So my advice to you is to basically hoard everything that you possibly can until you absolutely need to use it going forward, because you never know what you can trade these items for down the road to other players, or if you'll actually need them. So get an organization system going, organize your bank tab, and dedicate it to those currencies and hang on to them as much as you can. So this is a great segue to move on to my next beginner's tip, and that's to just discuss general progression. I know that this may sound counterintuitive and maybe other people out there would disagree, and that's fine. It's okay. You can disagree with me. But if you get stuck, and there is a great potential for that to happen at some point, truthfully, I'm looking at Act 3 on my melee monk, running around getting one hit by all the enemies in there. Take a break from that character, if possible, and try like a polar opposite class. So I went from the monk and then made a ranger. So I went from being in the fray nonstop, getting beat up constantly, switched over to the ranger, and tried playing that for a little bit. And I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but playing the ranger either one, cleared my head and allowed me to go back into the Act 3 on my monk and beat it fine when I was in cruel mode, or it kind of made me realize that I was completely ignoring all the defensive options inside the passive tree and on my gear, and was completely focused on damage. So of course I was getting ruined and wrecked every 4 seconds with enemies that were hitting me with ice damage or cold damage, whatever it is, when I had like, you know, negative 30 cold resist. That's probably not a good idea, right? Anybody would have thought that. Well, I didn't. And playing the ranger and going back and trying to understand a new play style helped me realize that the way I was playing on the monk was probably a little counterintuitive, but that's okay. But my recommendation is, if you do get stuck, don't get frustrated and quit or give up, because there are definitely points in the game where it's difficult. Try making a new character, get a different perspective on the game, and hey, maybe you'll like that character more and you can move forward with that one, or it'll teach you something that you didn't see before, or you'll see something on the passive tree that you hadn't seen before, and you'll head to that node if it's close to the one that you're working with on your current character. And discussing passives, this is also a great segue. Look at this mother... I mean, look at this thing. It's massive. There are hundreds of choices to make here. And what I recommend is, even though it'll probably take some time away from you running through different things and killing all the different monsters and having a great time, take a moment to look and see where you want to head on that passive skill tree. I know it's easy to just keep going and you get a point, you throw a point in here, get a point, throw a point in here. That's a mistake I made in the beginning, and I was missing out on some of the outer branches, quote unquote, I guess you would call them, because I found myself getting distracted by all of the branches really close to the beginning nodes, which some of those are really good and really useful, but there are some really powerful options on the outer edges of the passive tree map, and I would recommend that you kind of pseudo map out your route of where you're trying to go. This will both give you a plan and kind of a goal that you're making your way towards, and you'll also not miss out on some of those stronger passives that are towards the outer edges of the tree. And the last tip that I have is once you get to Act 2 and you unlock your first Ascendancy, raise your hand if you made a witch and made it a blood mage for the memes. That'd be me, right? So blood mage is probably really, really good. I did not realize that it was not going to benefit me at all and actually would hinder me in the beginnings of the witch. So many people go minion and go infernalist, which is what I probably should have done. I'm sure I could figure it out, but in the beginning, blood mage really just takes away your health as you cast different spells, and that's really not good in the beginning of the game because there's not a lot of life leech that you can get. So my advice here is to choose your Ascendancy wisely. Make sure that you read through the entire tree. Don't be an idiot like me and pick a tree that's gonna do more harm than good. Now, is that to say that you shouldn't pick blood mage? No, but maybe come up with a plan as to how you're gonna play the blood mage, as opposed to just jumping in and like, dang, that sounds cool, let's go ahead and let's pick blood mage, that sounds great. Don't do that. Be better than me. Make sure you have a plan when you're picking your Ascendancy, because you cannot change your Ascendancy after you select it. So I think these are pretty much the basics of things that I missed. I'm sure there's probably 14,000 other hints that I could give you right now to start this game because there's so much going on. So if you're watching this and feel like a great Samaritan and want to contribute to society, feel free to drop a comment below as to what you would recommend to people who start this game out for the first time, because by no means am I an expert. I still learn something new, probably 4 new things every day that I play this game, whether I'm asking somebody else or I just happen upon it. There's a lot going on. That's all I can say about it. So these are some things that I wish I had known when I started to make my journey slightly easier. So that's all I've got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.